Hello, this is Miguel Colombo, bringing you the daily headlines from www.maryjanecolombo.com. Yesterday in New York City, a retired Anglican bishop was arrested along with Occupy protesters in Duarte Park. Bishop George Packard, who was once a military chaplain in Iraq, joined other protesters climbing over a chain-link fence. Just before the protest, he had written on the internet, "What awaits us, I do not know. I do know that for me and the OWS, I know no violence is intended, only peaceful disobedience if it comes to that." Gideon Oliver, president of the New York City chapter of the National Lawyers Guild, said between 5 and 10 members of the clergy were among those arrested. The protest movement against financial inequality has spread to cities throughout the United States and other countries. After Bishop Packard tumbled over the fence, he climbed onto a wooden bench and waved for the crowd to follow. Ever since Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were taken over by the government in 2008, questions have swirled over who was responsible for their collapse. Friday, the Securities and Exchange Commission weighed in, filing fraud charges against former Fannie Mae CEO Daniel Mudd, former Freddie Mac CEO Richard Siren, and 4 other former executives. Federal officials say the mortgage giants lied to investors about the number of subprime loans they had on their books at the height of the credit boom. They also say the executives knew what was happening and even encouraged the deception. The SEC says both companies loaded up their balance sheets with many billions of dollars in risky subprime mortgages. Both companies took pains to conceal their holdings from the public. Senior executives at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac consciously withheld this information from shareholders because it would hurt the value of the company's stock and hurt the compensation that these executives received. Meanwhile, the Occupy protests continue around the country, interrupting foreclosure auctions and placing homeless people in vacant houses. And in the UK, occupiers have been branded as terrorists, right alongside Al-Qaeda.
Not make the same commitment, as Ira Bannett now reports.
Tents, dreadlocks, even didgeridoos. But are the Occupy London protesters really terrorists? The city's police force seems to think so. It sent a letter to banks and businesses in the financial district warning of the terror threat posed by Occupy activists. It puts them in the same bracket as Al-Qaeda.
Well, I'd say to anybody who believes it to come here and have a look for themselves and see that we're a totally peaceful protest. It's preposterous to say that.
We've seen crime linked to protests in recent weeks, notably around groups entering office buildings, and with that in mind we continue to brief key trusted partners on activity linked to protests.
This is the building in question, Occupy's so-called Bank of Ideas. Activists moved in here nearly 3 weeks ago. It had been empty for months. The apparent terrorists now use it for meetings and lectures on how to solve the current crisis. They can even count celebrity backers and politicians amongst their guests.
I think a huge number of people want to see a different kind of economic system. That's what people here stand for, and I wanted to come and lend solidarity to that.
The UK's complicated laws on squatting mean the owners still haven't been able to evict their new uninvited tenants. Since the building wasn't in use, the activists don't see why they should leave.
Is it fair, though, to occupy private property?
Is it fair that there's nearly 1 million buildings empty out there in the UK and people freeze to death every winter? I would counter that with.
This is Miguel Colombo signing off from www.maryjanecolombo.com.